Hi folks, it's Ulrich with Guitar Ingenuity. Today I want to do a second part of a little video series around why do our fingers hurt when we play guitar. Especially if you're a guitar beginner, you will experience more pain than someone who has been playing for a while. So in the first video we already covered a number of aspects that you should be aware of, and we discussed a number of tips and tricks to at least mitigate the pain, for the lack of the better term. Which brings me to my first point: the pain will not go away completely. The longer you play, the better it will get, but the fact of the matter is you'll have to go through that. Clearly, you've got to be careful. You might have a medical condition. If you, for instance, if you suffer from arthritis and your fingers hurt and your fingers already hurt and now you start learning to play guitar, that might be a problem. But I'm talking about the scenario where your hands are otherwise perfectly normal, so to speak. There's no medical condition. You start playing guitar, your fingertips really start hurting badly. All of us experience that. It gets better over course of time. Please stay away from all these claims that are out there that if you buy this type of guitar, or if you follow this method, or buy that course, you will never experience a pain in your fingers. I would be extremely cautious with that. I would recommend that you stay away from these offers. Okay, so let's get started. Today I want to talk about really quickly about the action of your guitar. The action is referred to as essentially the distance between the strings and your fretboard. The higher that action is, the more pressure you need to put the strings down, to press the strings down against the fretboard, and accordingly you will experience more pain. So you want to make sure that the action is right on your instrument. If you're a beginner, go to a guitar store, they do that for you. Speaking of strings, strings are not all the same. Obviously, we already discussed in the first video, there are nylon strings, there are steel strings. If you're playing a guitar with steel strings, you may want to start out with a light gauge. These strings, so strings come in different gauge categories, such as heavy, medium, and light. The lighter strings are just easy on your fingers. So in other words, the higher the gauge, the more juice you need in your fingers to handle those strings. And especially if you're a beginner, a heavy gauge might not be the right choice for you. You should switch to a light gauge and then gradually up that. So another thing I observe in some students is that in the beginning, they just press way too hard. So they're worried about making sure that the fingers are in the right position and they press like crazy. But the fact of the matter is, if the action of your guitar is adjusted, there is really no need to press the strings down that hard. So my point is, you should only press as hard as needed in order to make that chord or tone sound accurate. Now, the longer you play, the thicker the calluses will become on your fingertips, the easier it will get to work on the strings. So it comes down to patience. It's really putting in the time, putting in the effort. Don't overdo things in the beginning. Don't play 8 hours a day on your first day. As I recommend, if you can do 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day consistently every day, or 5 to 6 days a week at the least, but do it consistently, then you're in really good shape. And the last point I want to make for today might be a little bit controversial, especially if you're a guitar beginner, and I'm sure some viewers of this video will disagree with me and leave the comments accordingly, and that's fine. But just a general thing to think about. Some of my students found it beneficial to incorporate scales, playing guitar scales, fairly early on in their guitar journey. So let me zoom you in a little bit and I will explain. So the difference between a scale and a chord is, well, a chord is what you, as a guitar beginner, that's usually what you start out with, like a D major chord, like an A major chord, E major chord, G, and so forth. And now a scale is essentially it's a combination of different single notes. And for instance, if you pick a simple scale like a minor pentatonic scale, something like this, slightly out of tune, but it doesn't matter. But you see how my fingers are at work here individually and how my whole hand and wrist is working. So that strengthens your flexibility, that builds muscle in your fingers. that helps your dexterity. And all that, as you practice these single notes or a scale, will help you to play these chords, because your hands and your fingers become stronger as you practice scales. So again, look up a minor pentatonic scale. It's fairly easy to learn. Practice that, and you will notice how your fingers become more flexible and stronger. Alright, so let's sum up. The action of your strings, or the action of your guitar rather, the distance between your strings and the fretboard, needs to be adjusted if the action is too high. If the distance between your strings and your fretboard is too high, then you need just more pressure, you need more muscle to press the strings down. That will cause you more pain. So get that adjusted. Use the right gauge of strings. The lighter the gauge, the easier it is on your fingers. Only press as hard as you must in order to play the chord. Look into a simple guitar scale to increase your flexibility and build muscle in your fingers that will help you playing chords. And as I mentioned before, patient practice, regularity, consistency in your practice, the same amount every day over course of time will make your hands, your fingers, your joints stronger. Just stick with it and it will get better over course of time. And the last point I want to make is, there's some, I saw online, you know, there's all these kind of home remedies. Soak your fingers in alcohol, soak your fingers in vinegar or whatever. I don't know how effective and helpful these things are. I've never tried that. In my opinion, there is just no way to avoid the pain completely, but as you stick with it and as you follow some of the tips and guidance that I just provided in this and also the first part of this video series, you should be able to keep that level of pain under control. So I hope it was helpful. If you disagree, if you have additional thoughts, if you have any comments, please leave them below the video. And before you check out, do me a favor, please subscribe. I'll see you next time. Till then, bye-bye.